made you decide that you wanted to pursue an acting career?
Um, I'm of the opinion that God gives everybody a vocation, and the idea is to make your vocation your occupation if you can. I got this idea when I was a kid by asking a preacher, because I was thinking about being a preacher when I was really little, and I said, why do you become a preacher? He said, boy, if God calls you to do a thing, then run. And if you can't run and it catches you, then you do it. He said that's what it's like with preaching. And so I think that's what it's like with any kind of creative field, because you ain't gonna make a lot of money. It's not the reason that you do it. You probably are gonna spend most of your life not being successful and trying things and failing. But if you feel like you need to really create art or do something in the creative field, you have to be called to it. So that's my personal belief, is that God puts the desire in you to do it, and then your job is to try to bring it out in the most positive way.
Now, you started in Georgetown. Your first acting was in Georgetown. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I was the most unpopular child, I think, in the county at the time. By the time I hit middle school, I was very, very large. So I was what used to be called the fat kid back when people were called fat. I was a fat kid. I was a sissy kid, couldn't throw a football. Had no idea how to do most of the things that most boys know how to do. Was not coordinated, didn't want to hunt. I didn't want to kill anything. I would have rushed in front of a deer and taken the bullet so the deer wouldn't have to die. So, I'm sure my father was like, this is my son? This is the fat kid, the sissy kid, the smart kid, because Mom took us to church, and I really liked Sunday school, and I knew all the answers, and my hand was always up first. And I know that, the book of Daniel. And same in school. I knew all the answers. Fat kid, sissy kid, smart kid, and ugly kid, because I had really bad acne. So all of those together made me really unpopular, and I found that the only way to keep from getting the crap beat out of me every day, either verbally or physically, was to amuse people. So I learned that if you entertain people, they won't hit you. And over the years, I've met many actors who started the same way.
Do you remember what your first acting role was?
Yeah, at Winyah High School, had a drama teacher named Judy Peterson, and she took in misfit kids like me. And I had a role in a sort of a melodrama, like a spoof up on a silent, where the girl can't pay the rent and the guy with the mustache comes. So my name was Gentle Grimes. I was really evil. And I should not have done this, but in the heat of the moment, during the performance, I improvised and I made some of his lines into an Elvis song and gyrated like Elvis, and the crowd went wild. And I thought, wait, I like this. What's that? And so, yeah, that was the beginning. And then I was in every play. But in college, I could never get a role. I couldn't get a role. I've never been able to get anybody to hire me to do anything in my life, so I've always hired myself. So when I speak to kids, I'm a big believer. I say, hire yourself.
But what people may not remember, they may remember your acting, here at the Strand Theater. They may remember things like that, and things they've seen you on TV and in movies. What they may not remember is they heard your voice on the radio before they saw you acting. You were a radio DJ.
That's right. I worked at WGMB, Rock of the Bay. When Georgetown had its own FM radio station, and I was a teenage disc jockey, and I did that right up to when I went to college. And it was great because I could hide behind the microphone, entertain people. They wouldn't have to look at my ugly face. I could make them laugh and smile and play records and be cool. And I don't know if I was any good, but it was a lot of fun.
Do you miss those days at all, radio days?
Yeah, I dreamed about radio for maybe a decade after leaving it. I dreamed about it. I really liked it. But then I went back to see what modern day radio is.
Yeah.
No, I have no interest in pushing buttons. It was very tactile then. All the spots, the commercials were on carts. They were called cartridges. They would look like 8-tracks, clear 8-trackers. And you put them in, press a button to start it, reach back, you get the other one. So you'd have them all stacked up. Your microphone was here. You switch on the mic. You put the record down in cue. You pull the record back till you hear that little get the record ready to go. And WGMB, Rock of the Bay, looking like a good day in Georgetown. We got a high tide today of 7:14. Boom, then you roll the record. Steve Miller Band, touching down in New England town. And So it was very touchy, you did things, but now it's just,
You always felt like you scored a touchdown when you walked the song up, talked it right to the lyric, and you did it right. It always felt like you scored a touchdown.
God, that's something that, I know, but people never
Yeah,
done it, don't
yeah.
know. Look, if you're watching this and you're young or you're young at heart, try it. Even if you don't have the old turntable, just play a song and try to talk right up to the minute when they start singing.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
It's always fun. And the other thing people may not remember about Bill Oberst, you were also the director of the Chamber of Commerce.
I was Chamber of Commerce
For a while.
director, which is pretty much acting. I got travel writers to come here and told them stories about the county, which were not always entirely completely accurate, but were very entertaining and got us written about all over the place. We became the ghost capital of the South and written about in the New York Times. And we had darn CBS News here. And so, this kind of leads into, if I may, the reason that I loved Ray Brabdury as a kid. I want to play him now. And I'm going to do the show at the Strand Saturday night, the 6th at 4 and 7. There, I got in my times. Stories. Bradbury believed that for life to be meaningful, he said if life's going to be worth a damn, love and imagination have to be the center of it. And people need a story. They need a story into which their life fits, something that's larger than themselves. He said humans have to have this. And so that's what he created with his writing. And that's what I love about him. Then that's what we did with the Chamber of Commerce, is we created a narrative, a story for Georgetown. And narratives are very big now. Everybody has a personal brand.
Now, what made you decide, hey, if I'm going to do this and do it right, I've got to be in California where all the action is? When did you make that decision, and why did you make that decision?
2008, by mistake. I was very happy doing touring theater. I'd done touring theater for 10 years, made a good living at it. It was great. Played Mark Twain, played JFK, played Louis Gazard, touring around everywhere. And then my computer broke. My old MS-DOS computer broke. And so my father said, boy, you need to get you a decent computer. And he went with me to Sam's, and he forced me to buy a modern, updated, one of the programs that came with it was a film search, look for jobs in the film industry. It came packaged in it. So I did that. I looked it up, and there was this role for General Sherman in a documentary called Sherman's March on the History Channel. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, and I thought, no, I don't know how to do anything on camera. I've never done anything like this before. But the darn computer had a webcam on it, and I thought, well, I have a beard because I play Jesus, and I have a blue coat because I've done Dickens. So I thought, okay, what the heck, I'll try this. So I dyed my hair red, put on the beard. I downloaded pictures of epaulets for the shoulders and cut out the pictures and scotch taped them on. Got a cigar from Mark Twain, and I did this audition and sent it in. And then darned it, they didn't say, come up to Washington and audition for this. And so I dressed, I drove up to Washington overnight, got there in the morning, and in the metro station, I put on my makeup in the car, my mustache. So I rode in this full Civil War reenactor's uniform I'd borrowed with sword and everything on the Washington Metro. Nobody said a word. And I went in, I did the audition, and the director said, well, we have to contact the History Channel. It'll be, probably a week or so. He sent the audition in. I'm walking out the door about 15 minutes later. I got my makeup off. And he said, hey, Bill. He said, well, that was the quickest yes I ever got. And so that's the first thing that I did. And that led me to get a manager in LA. And then I thought, well, I'll just split my time. I'll just go to LA sometime. But you can't go to LA sometime, at least not in those days. You have to be there. So yeah, I moved to LA for 10 years.
And after you got there, you did all kinds of things, but your specialty was horror flicks.
Yes.
Is it still, or do you still do a lot of those? Or
I do less horror than I used to. Mm-hmm. I used to do a lot.
Why was that? What was it about that genre of movie that you said?
My face. The camera sees the face in a certain way. The camera sees archetypes, and here we get back to stories again. Around the campfire, if you're talking about a villain, people in their mind have the idea. Angular face, maybe a rough complexion, close together eyes, overhanging brow. There's your villain. You talk about the hero, wide eyes, square jaw, big face, So we have these archetypes in our mind, and the camera really loves them, and you can't fight them. So when I first got to LA, I thought, well, I'll do historical, but there aren't that many historical things. So I was starving, man. I was starving. And my manager kept sending me out for soccer dad roles. And I would try to be as benign as I could. But I had a really nice casting director afterwards and said, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "You look like the soccer dad that's going to kill the team and eat them." And I said, "Okay." I said, what do I do? And she said, "Go dark and you'll make it." And I said, "How dark?" And she said, "With your face, you can't go dark enough. You look for the most perverted, twisted roles. Go out for them and you'll book them." She was right.
People might say, because you're a man of faith, you love Jesus Christ, how do you justify horror movies and Christianity mixing? I mean, how does that work?
I play, when I do horror, and I've got about 100 of them on my resume. Not all good. Maybe one of them's good. Maybe two. Yeah, about two. It's not bad, 2% rate. I play human monsters. I play man without belief, man without God, man without meaning. I play all manner of humans who have cast away all meaning and made themselves their only God. And so if I'm going to play evil, early on I said, "Lord, if you don't want these doors open, shut the doors." And the doors kept opening. They kept opening. They kept opening. I said, "All right, I'm going to walk through these doors, but if I'm going to play evil, I'm going to do it right." So I made it my job to study how to portray evil in a way that would make people's skin crawl. Even if they came to a crappy horror movie just to laugh, for a moment they would think, "Whoa, is there evil like that in the world?" Yes, baby, there is. You better believe there is. So that's why I have enjoyed doing these horror roles. Because if I'm playing someone who has absolutely no morals and it treats their fellow man as if they're simply chattel, beast, that exists in the world. And it also strips away people's, including religious people, it strips away our ability to say, "Well, I'm not like that." Yes, you are. There but for the grace of God. Yes, you are. That's the human condition. And to go back to Ray Brabdury, Brabdury understood that the human condition was that we would be fiends one day and we would be angels the next. And that's the human condition, and it's not going to change.
Did you find that there are more people that have faith like you do that actually do this, that it's not uncommon?
I'll tell you this, because we're talking in the South, and I know this will be seen by a lot of people who grew up in my faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just be straight out with it. People are very interested in Jesus, but they are not interested in Christians. In the larger world, in the entertainment world, you bring up Jesus and you start talking about Jesus, you start talking about the atonement, you start talking about what Jesus really said and did. You talk about the washing of feet. You talk about let the children come to me. You talk about forgiveness. You talk about what Jesus really was. They're interested and they're into him. I've never had anybody say, "No, don't talk about Jesus." But always, every single time, "Well, Jesus is really great, but those damn church people, I'm going to tell you, and they go off." So I often say that if it weren't for Christians, everybody would follow Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that disparagingly, because I'm talking about myself too. But we do a really poor job of representing him when actually he said, "If I be lifted up." Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all you have to do is just lift him up. So yeah, on those opportunities when I've been bold enough, to say something about Jesus, nobody ever said, "Don't talk about Jesus." But they did always say, "Don't talk to me about church." Then John, then Jesus, knowing that he had come from God and was going to God, knowing that all things were in his power. Okay. Knowing that at that moment, everything is in his power. What does he do? What does he do, Scott? He removes his garments, he puts on the servant's towel, and he washes feet.
Well, that's true.
So
yes.
The two parts of that sentence, that clause, are related. Knowing that he had come from God and was returning to God, and knowing that all things were in his hand, put on a servant's towel and began to wash feet. There it is. That's him, and that's the heart. That if we portrayed that heart, then it would be a much better witness. Yeah, that's the end of my sermon.
Now, let's go to Ray Brabdury. You're going to be here Saturday night, Saturday at 4 and 7, I'm sorry. And tell us about what people can expect when they come.
So, this show grew out of disillusionment with Hollywood. One too many red carpets, seeing homeless people, feet away from us while we're kissing and hugging and getting pictures taken. It just became sickening to me. And I'm not a good celebrity. I don't do it well because I don't like hierarchy. I don't like this false feeling of some people are more important than other people. I don't like it. It grates me. So I said, you know what? I got to get away. I've got to get back to why I really wanted to do this in the first time. So Ray Brabdury was my favorite childhood author. And growing up as this lonely kid in Georgetown, coming to this theater to watch movies. So I started going back to Ray. And I read something at the back of Fahrenheit 451, just flipping through the book. And it said everyone must leave something behind when they die. Something their hand has touched. Something that's like them when they take their hand away. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you love something, touch something, and change something from the way it was before you touched it to something that's like you when you take your hand away. The difference between the lawn cutter and the gardener is the touching. The lawn cutter might just as well have never been there, but the gardener will be there a lifetime. That was the quote. And so I really had to think, what have you touched, Billy? What are you leaving behind? You know, life is finite. What are you leaving behind? And so then I got more and more into Brabdury, and I thought, my God, somebody should play this man, because you cannot encounter Ray Brabdury and not come away more hopeful, more youthful, and more joyful. We need that in the world. Somebody should do this. So I encouraged a lot of people out there who physically resembled him, actors, you know, you really should do this. And somebody, oh, well, you know, we're going to do it, but nobody ever did. And I thought, okay, all right, Lord, again, if you open the doors, I'll try to do this. So I started doing a short story of his called Pillar of Fire, about a dead man who comes up out of his grave, and he's really mad because he's the last dead man in the world. And I did this at the Pasadena Library in California. And afterwards, we had question and answer. And this was purely the Lord, because usually I do this inside, and I don't do Q&A. I never do Q&A. But there was a power outage on the block, so we did it outdoors on the lawn of the library. And afterwards, there's a bunch of Brabdury people there who knew him. And we're doing Q&A, and somebody says, you know, do you have a secret dream, something you'd like to do? So I just blurted it out. I said, this is ridiculous, but I would really like to play Ray Brabdury. So afterwards, this man comes up to me, and he says, hey, I heard what you said. Are you serious? I said, well, yeah. And he said, here's Ray's daughter's email address. I will write her and tell her that you're okay and to read your mail. And so that got it started.
You did it at Spoleto in the past few weeks. What was that like?
We debuted in Los Angeles, did it in Indianapolis, and then did it at Piccolo Spoleto. Piccolo Spoleto was a test because, sure, it played well in Los Angeles because that's Ray's adopted hometown. Mm-hmm. Played well in Indianapolis because that's where the Brabdury Center is, which has all of his archives and papers. But in Charleston, South Carolina, would a show about Ray Brabdury play? And it did. We did really well. We sold out, and we had good performances, and yeah. Knock on wood, it'll do well in Georgetown here as well.
And it's at 4 and 7 on Saturday, and it's also a fundraiser for the Strand Theater.
Yeah, it's a fundraiser to help with the marquee. That marquee dates from 1941, and it requires constant maintenance. And so I talked to Foy, the theater manager here, and said, you know, I want to do something for the theater. Is there some physical part of the theater that needs help? And she said, yeah, the marquee. So that's what our proceeds are for. 2 shows, 4 and 7 on Saturday the 6th. And what people can expect from the show is what Kirk said at the end of The Wrath of Khan, to date myself. After all that Kirk's gone through, all this death and this horror and the death of his son, and he's realized that his actions have caused all of this. At the end of it, McCoy says, how do you feel, Jim? And Kirk says, young. I feel young. And that's what I guarantee, that if you come to the show, that you'll leave feeling young, no matter how old you are. And that's why I love to do it. I get chill in my spine just talking about doing this show, because it means so much to me.